probably wouldn't have to deal with this as an attorney general, but what is your attitude about the one-care health care program they want for the state of California? Do you really?
You mean single payer?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been a co-author of single payer since the time Sheila Cure introduced it. Because I think the business of insurance is not healthcare. The business of insurance is insurance. And they make their money by denying care. They make their money by conserving what gets paid out. So the more that gets paid out, the less there is for shareholders. And the thing that people forget is corporations have, and officers of a corporation, any corporation, have what's called a fiduciary duty to the shareholders. And it's above just a regular duty. It's a fiduciary duty, and it's one of the highest duties that can exist under the law. And those directors of the corporation's first obligation is to the shareholders to maximize return. It's not to deliver the product. It's not to provide health care. It is to provide profit to the investors. So that's what's so upside down about the whole issue of health care. And it's structured in such a way that it really isn't health care, it's disease care. Because most of the times with your coverage, if you want prevention services, you don't get reimbursed for prevention services. Kaiser has some, and they are the most progressive in that area of healthcare, and it really is about healthcare and disease prevention. But most insurance is not about healthcare; it's about the treatment of disease. So you can't get help to stay healthy. Well, look, first of all, I think it's a public option. Without a public option, you have no real competition because there won't be anything for the private companies to compare themselves to except themselves, and we know that doesn't work here. So, look, I think he's got a very difficult road ahead. My belief is there is a vocal, active strain of Republicans who want to see this president fail, so that they make him a one-term president, and that the country is then so disappointed that they will elect a Republican in his stead. And that's how else do you have such a vociferous group of people who still argue about whether or not he's an American? Where was this guy born? I mean, these people are trying to figure out whether or not the President of the United States is an American. And that's got nothing to do with the merits. It has to do with continuing to undermine his ability to move the agenda forward.
My question, though, I know that
yeah.
After 2010, which, I think it's a big thing. We need to, I think it's really important that we all really support the president and show that we can support.
Right.
Are you on that?
No, I'm happy to support your president. I think single payer for a state like California is a project that we continue to support and move forward, because this governor will never sign it. This governor will never sign single payer. But what happens is, so long as you have a bill that is about single payer, you get editorials about it, you get newspaper stories, more people become familiar with it. And it's a process of educating the public and gaining support. These big ideas don't usually happen in 1 year. Yeah, exactly. So for the president's plan, support the president's plan because it moves us closer to getting coverage for everyone. But my own personal feeling is the best answer is a single payer.
Well, do you think that, as a lawyer, if they don't pass, say, the percentage amendment in this current bill,
right,
is there a legal problem with California? Are we gonna be in court with the federal government if we pass a single payer without the waiver? Without the waiver in place?
We're never going to pass it.
Well, I mean, we passed it before.
Well,
we just we couldn't fund it.
Well, it won't get signed until this guy's gone.
Yeah, well, I think they're all projecting after the election. Right? They still have to pass the taxes, though, so if they have a 2/3, then they can't fund it. But
right. But I just think it's important to promote the single payer, to educate the public.
I was just wondering on the percentage amendment what your opinion was.
I don't know.
If it's,
I'll just tell you, I don't
crucial.
know. I thought about it.
I have a question to ask you. There's a lot of movement going on in the state of California for the death penalty. How do you feel about the death penalty as it is executed right now?
Yeah, on the death penalty, I don't support it in Texas. All right?
They kill everybody.
Exactly, or Alabama or Arkansas. Because I don't think they believe in the Constitution in some of those states. But in California, I support the death penalty provided that all of the constitutional guarantees have been satisfied. So that means you have to have adequate counsel. You can't have somebody who falls asleep during the course of your trial. You have to have someone who fights aggressively for the client, who raises all of the defenses. If there is evidence, it has to be tested. Don't tell me that you didn't have the money to test the DNA evidence to find out whether or not you've been able to exculpate this person as a possible suspect. And at the end of that, I think the people of the state of California have the right and the ability to express their preference for how they think someone convicted of a capital offense or special circumstances should be treated. So I support it in those instances.
Does anyone else have a question?
I have just a curious question. Who investigates the assembly and senate in our state?
Oh, we like to do that ourselves.
Should there not be an independent outsider to see the little shenanigans going
Well, I
on
mean,
with
look,
property and all that stuff?
Look, there can be, and let me give the example that may be fresh on everyone's mind. Assemblymember Mike Duvall from Yorba Linda, I know Mike, and he was a hale and hearty fellow, but man did he mess up, and he messed up in a number of ways. To have first of all, to have that sort of a relationship when you're married, that's a big problem. First of all, that's like the big problem. Secondly, to have that sort of a relationship with someone who represents interests over whom you make decisions. He was the vice chair of the Utilities and Commerce. And the woman who is suspected, although she's denied it, was a lobbyist for one of the energy companies. The Assembly has an ethics committee who is charged with conducting the investigation. Jerry Brown has said he's going to wait to see what the results of that investigation are before he makes a decision. You may recall that a couple of days after the story broke, that Mr. Duvall issued a statement where he denied having sexual relations with the woman. Now, you think, okay, well, that's as a husband, that's what he ought to do. But it's more than that, because if they track votes favorable to the company she represented during the period of time that they were together, the sexual favors are a thing of value. It becomes a bribe. And so he's concerned that he'll be prosecuted for bribery.
But who would prosecute?
The Attorney General. The Attorney General has the power to do that.
So how willing would you be to scrutinize and evaluate?
No, I've left that to the league. That's okay.
Is there an equivalent of the GAO in the state legislature? Or?
Well, we have remember Laura Chick from Los Angeles? She was hired in order to take a look at the economic stimulus fund for that specific purpose, to make sure that it was spent appropriately. We have a legislative analyst, and we have a legend auditor who is empowered to conduct audits. The ledge auditor is part of what's called the audit committee. They accept recommendations from projects from legislators to go out and take a look at programs to see how they're working and whether they're working. And then the ledge analyst is an independent entity that is responsible for taking a look at legislation and at programs, and also doing analysis of budget. Okay? Thank you.